Alrighty. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Shock and Schlock. I am joined today by director and artist Scott Philip Goergens. How are you today?
I'm well. I'm well. Thank you for asking. I hope you're well too.
I am. Thank you. I appreciate you being here today.
Sure.
As many of my viewers or friends know that I'm a big fan of your film 29 Needles. I did a review on my channel recently, and I just wanted to discuss that with the time that I have you here today. Just to start off, I wanted to see what made you want to make a movie in the first place. You've been working in art for a while, but I know this is your directorial debut. After those years and working in other mediums, what really drew you to making this film?
Well, I really had made short films for years. Like since I was a teenager, I kind of made, I played around with a video camera and made weird little short films that were just us playing around as teenagers. So I kind of always wanted to make a feature-length film and go that direction. In the meantime, I kept on with my art, but just wanted to get to the point where I wanted to do something larger than just having fun with having fun with like film and friends and stuff. So I wanted to go bigger scale, and I guess it just took a little bit of time, and I generated a kind of a story, an idea that I really was inspired with, and went that direction. And I just was, as I was doing it, I was like, I wonder if there would ever be an audience for this, but it didn't matter to me. I just wanted to make it the way I wanted to make it. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely saw that there. I always appreciate when I can see like a director's passion for the movie, just following their own idea and not really worrying about what the audience is going to think, and just hoping that the film itself is going to find its own audience in a way without sort of breaking down and making those sort of edits to their own movie just to appeal to a wider audience. I think that with this film in particular, I've shown a lot of people it, and we've all enjoyed it a lot. And I think the biggest thing that I've heard from people that I've watched it with personally is that it really does feel like a movie that it has a very singular vision on what it wants to be. It never really stoops down to become something else there, which I know we all appreciated a lot. And
good.
yeah. And I know this film, it got picked up by Unearthed for their Too Extreme for Mainstream series. I just want to know your thoughts on that. I feel like that moniker is sort of a double-edged sword there. Sort of when you say too extreme for mainstream, it kind of makes a lot of people back off from that and sort of appeals to more of the people in the extreme cinema community already. Was that something you thought of when you were making that, or?
I didn't know really. No, I did not think of it when I was making it. I'm like, I'm making a movie that has extremely graphic sexual scenes in it, and I'm thinking, how will it ever get picked up by anybody? And I said, I'll just pay for it to get made on Blu-ray or DVD and just get it out there for people if it needs to be. But I was thrilled that there was Unearthed, and they were willing to do that. And I understand, it's part of their too extreme for mainstream, but I never saw it as like I saw it as a plus. It's getting out there, it's reaching an audience, and they were willing to take the leap and add it to their collection, and I was thrilled. So I think that with them, they might be seeing a little bit of that double-edged sword as well, a little bit, and I think that they're kind of rebranding that line to just the abbreviation instead of like spelling out the words, to kind of give people like this just like this, not so like the KFC instead of Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Absolutely.
Like,
yeah.
we're not going to say the word so much.
Yeah.
So this time I get it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can definitely see that being a plus too. I mean, at least personally, that's how I initially heard about it too. I'll admit that I saw the too extreme for mainstream moniker. I've been a fan of extreme films for a long time, but when I watched this one, what really surprised me is that what you see a lot in some of the films, not necessarily from Unearthed, but a lot of the extreme cinema stuff. It's a lot of people trying to make something that's going to really shock you, something that's really out there, trying to be edgy, push the envelope here. And I feel like 29 Needles didn't really, that wasn't its main focus there. Like it felt very much like a artistic vision. It's more of a character study than I was used to with the genre there. And I know that 29 Needles, I'm assuming it was a reference to Albert Fish there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, know a little bit about that as well. I know it's not about serial killers or anything like that, but I do see sort of in the film, like the main character, Francis, there could have, if chosen to go down a different path, he would have sort of had that mindset that leads you to becoming something like that. But
Indeed.
instead sort of took that and put it on himself instead, which I thought was really interesting. And another thing about that as well, how did you go about finding people to be in this? Because I know with this being, I know you've done short films in the past as well, but with you being your first major movie, I feel like 29 Needles could have been maybe a harder to sell plot to some people. And I know watching this, I was watching Brooke Berry here, really fantastic performance from him, but it felt like it was very physically intense.
Yeah.
And he definitely put himself into that. And looking more into him, I mean, I couldn't find a ton of information on anything that he'd been in before. So how'd you get in contact with somebody like that? I mean, he really seemed like he was really open to a lot there. So
yeah, and I appreciate your kind of like attention and interest to the film. I don't know if you realize this, but Brooke Berry passed away, and this was Brooke's first film. And Brooke passed right after the world premiere at Nightmares Film Festival, and Brooke had just transitioned to female that year, and there was just a lot of it was a difficult road, but it was going to be exciting to really work with Brooke on this next film, because it was kind of really geared towards Brooke and the amazing performance that was in 29 Needles. So finding the talent, I would say almost everybody had no background in acting. Most of the people I found on social media and like weird Craigslist wanted ads.
yeah.
You know, I mean, I did some digging. I mean, I was the casting director. I was everything.
Mhm.
So I knew that there was going to be a heavy a sexual element to it for a lot of the people, that they would at least have to be okay with it. So I kind of I dove into that aspect first, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to pull a bunch of people and then see who can act from there. And then those that can't act, I can at least put them in the background in other scenes. And it was amazing to find Brooke, as well as the others in the film. But Brooke really, that character had to carry the film. So
Yeah.
it was crucial. So
Yeah. First off, my
Yeah.
condolences for that. I wasn't aware. That's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
Not just personally, but to the film community as well, because I mean, he really, for being a first-time performer in that was really a great role.
Stellar. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was showing that to people, that was everybody's main sort of takeaway from that, were the directorial vision, staying to that, and Brooke Berry's performance, and that was fantastic.
Yeah.
Just really appreciated that. So that's awful.
Yeah.
But speaking on that next film as well, can you give us any information on that? Or I know it's probably under wraps, but you know, give me the like few words that you would describe it yourself as. Just
I still haven't quite came up with like an elevator speech, so to speak, for the film
yeah.
yet, and I'm keeping a lot of it under wraps. But I would say that it still is a bit of a character study, but not just one character. It's a couple, and it's a small group of people in like a retreat kind of situation,
Mhm.
but not necessarily a retreat. And they've come together to kind of deal with the circumstances that are going on with that group. And I kind of really wanted to put these people together in a unique way, and tell a story that I felt would be really interesting to tell from an interesting direction. I know that's all a lot of vagary, but it's kind of, I got to keep the genie in the bottle a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's still at this stage, but I do plan on starting to film next year. So, and the script is mostly there. It's just I'm thinking of possibly getting to the point where I whittle down some characters, combine some characters. I was thinking it was going to be 10 or 12, and I'm thinking now it might be like 8. So it's a matter of how to kind of combine or eliminate.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Yeah. I know I'll definitely on the lookout for that, as well as the group of people that I've shown that. What I've noticed a lot in 29 Needles and your artwork as a whole is a lot of it has a very surreal nature to it. Is there something that draws you to that in particular? I've seen your most recent paintings as well. Really liked those as well, with the sort of city background with the fantastical sort of combined there. What I see a lot in artwork like that usually is it's more a world that's sort of created outside of that. So it could be a city with stuff like that in it, but it's sort of all encompassed in that. And this felt like definitely a mashup between, I'm assuming Baltimore mixed with the creatures there. And I was wondering if there was anything that's drawn you to that as well.
Well, I call them my Baltimore Monsters, and I've started to go in a more like abstract way beyond that, with just these very abstract shapes that are very kind of organic, and I call them organic forms. But the Baltimore Monsters I've been doing for years and years, and the idea around that was, I mean, I love monsters. I think that it's so fun to kind of create them, but and I think it's neat to, if somebody were to visit Baltimore and wanted a little piece of that, or people that live here, kind of to get something different than just like a landscape or some type of study, and do something that's kind of still represents Baltimore, but has a little bit different take to it and different style. And you know, I figured that was a great combination there.
Yeah, it's definitely more memorable, for sure, compared to a lot of that stuff that I've seen in that style. You said you loved monsters as well. Was that something that drew you to the horror genre initially?
Yeah, I think that I from an earlier age, I was introduced to horror, and I really I latched onto it. It was a kind of a way to really, I think, just compartmentalize and deal with difficult things that people deal with in reality. And it's kind of about learning how to overcome difficult obstacles. You see characters and you can relate to them, or you can, sometimes it's just a movie that scares you, and you know, you were able to get through it, and you're like, oh my goodness, okay,
Yeah,
well, that feels good, and I can separate
absolutely.
myself from that.
Yeah,
And then sometimes it's, you can identify with the character that either is the final girl or the survivor, and you know, understand that, or the revenge kind of thing. Where, but it's about I think it's about, you know, really kind of dealing with horrors and overcoming them. And um, I was drawn to that because of that. And you know, being a confused gay teen, I was like, you know, drawn to that because I didn't know really what was going to be happening for my future. And you know, I was like,
absolutely.
am I going to identify this way? I guess, I mean, is this, am I just going to let the world know? Or you know, it just felt like such a, like a burden. And it was really nice to be able to kind of grab onto something and just feel like I could grow with that, and just kind of
Absolutely.
overcome. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think that's what drew me to horror as well initially, is that horror almost feels like a reflection of like the director's own personal feelings, just sort of told in a more unique way rather than something like a drama about a family where they represent themselves through that character. And I feel like it's reflective of, in many cases, a lot of the fears that we have. And I think that's been the case for many years. Just for example, like something like Godzilla or something like that being representative of our fear of nuclear war and sort of what would
Right.
come from that. Always found that really interesting as well. And I think what keeps people in horror as well, even away from the films, are a sense of community that we have, more so than other genres that I found. I was a musician for many years as well, and it's sort of the same thing there. The more harsh or sort of away from the mainstream the genre is, the closer knit the groups of people become. You have that sort of sense of community there. And extreme horror in particular is sort of a very niche genre, if you're going to call it a genre there. So what's their response been from the community, as well, with you as a sort of new on the scene director, at least there?
Um, I was pleasantly surprised that I was really taken in, and people have really responded well. It's a very supportive group of people, and they really appreciate and have appreciated, my involvement and what I made. And that's exactly what I was hoping when I made film. And when I make films, it's like it's the artist's dream to have it understood, or at least embraced. Whether it's fully understood, it's a matter of interpretation, which is even better, because I kind of like to keep as much behind the curtain as possible, to leave up
Definitely.
to leave up to the viewers. Kind of like it allows you to kind of still move with the story and piece beyond the viewing, and see what drew this, what came of this, why was this, instead of it being all out there. But yeah, so the people have really embraced me and the film and the community, and I've been thrilled with that. So
Yeah, that's great. I have seen that with 29 Needles as well. My own interpretation of the film was much different than a lot of other people's. I mean, initially took it sort of as a parallel to something like Dante's Inferno, with Francis being led by this other character of Hans there, sort of taking him through. And when they go to that club, around the first third or half of the movie, where he's explaining the different levels of that, I felt like that was sort of a parallel to Dante's Inferno, when Dante's going through and he's explaining the levels of that as well, with the seventh floor being sort of the final area there. And I've spoken with other people that took it as a much more religious sort of representation, or a more literal representation of someone sort of going on a downward spiral. I think I've really appreciated that about it as well. Really enjoyed that. Was there something that inspired you to include religious imagery there? Though in particular, the final scene, I don't want to spoil it here, but there's a pretty clear religious imagery towards the very end of the film with Francis and the other character there. Was there something that wanted to make you include that in there?
Well, from an artist perspective, it was a very visual scene, and I had that in my head early on as the way I wanted it to be ended. I mean, it's his journey, and it kind of needed a point. It obviously it didn't end at the end, but it that part of the story ended there, and I kind of wanted there to be a good visual to represent that. And I felt like there's a huge element of what he was going through, which was very much of a spiritual journey, whether however you interpret that spiritual journey, whether
Yeah.
it's one way or another or whatever. But he was certainly grappling with his himself and who he was and his, you know, demons, so to speak.
Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting way of covering that too. Usually, or more commonly in this sort of genre, when somebody's grappling with those, I think the most common thing for people to have is like they become a serial killer or something like that. But Francis, when he speaks at the bar and on camera, he seems much more aware of himself in a way, or he sort of knows who he is. And when he talks about what he does to himself, he says it doesn't make him feel good, but it makes him feel better. I
Right.
found that really interesting. Um, sort of, um, I feel like that feeling of like breaking down yourself to reach a certain point, or I don't know. I guess what I took it as, I mean, he sort of feels more alive. It seems like he's really bored with sort of where he's at in a way, and he sort of takes his anger on people out on himself just to make sure, like, to make himself feel alive in a way. Found that really interesting as well. And I really enjoyed that the film was told very much through visuals. The dialogue was there as well, and appreciated that. But a lot of the film sort of banked on Brooke Berry's performance there. It was super physical, very interesting in that way. I really appreciated that a lot of the story was just told through his actions toward himself, through his facial expressions, everything like that in the film. Francis's character there, really liked that. It
Yeah.
also
I
it
mean,
also felt. Oh, I'm sorry.
it tells, it shows that his level of talent, or Brooke, her level of talent with
Yeah,
the character, it was important, to really be able to portray so much with just facial expressions, because it's a character isn't just about their dialogue, you know, so especially
absolutely.
in that role. So yeah.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the soundtrack of this film as well. It certainly felt like one of those cases where the film almost feels like the two are symbiotic, the soundtrack and the visuals of the film as well. How did you find Patrick Andrew Willis for that? I really enjoyed the soundtrack there. It really matched up with the mood. I think even more than most mainstream movies that I've seen, the audio certainly evoked mood, and I don't think um, the film would be where it's at without the soundtrack there as well. The film is great on its own, but if it had something less moody and atmospheric there, I feel like a lot of the tone would be much different than what it came out to be there.
Definitely, yeah. There's so many different elements that can make and break a movie, especially like um, an independent feature or one with a restrained budget, and certainly that score um, and Andrew's sound design was crucial for how it was received. I, I know him as Andrew. His first, he professionally he goes by Patrick Andrew Willis. So P. Andrew Willis. But we met when we both lived in, or he's still living there in Boston, and we worked together. And we, I mean, he's a musician. He's in like 3 bands right now, 2 bands off and on. But he professionally scores documentaries, films, commercials. And when it came time for me doing this, I'm like, hey, can you help me out?
Yeah.
And he's like, sure. So he was very closely associated with, over the years, really creating the right tone. And then just we would tweak this and tweak that to kind of match up with the edit that I had created, and what he accomplished was beautiful. And I really wanted something very kind of organic, for lack of a better word, but just something that's so he used like a variety of these different like household items to kind of create sounds, like banging on radiator or silverware or things like that just ended up bringing tones and then reverb, and it was really interesting what he did. And there's a nice little bonus part in the making of that talks about his process. So check that out if you haven't seen that part. But yeah, it's he did. So he's definitely going to be scoring all of my movies, and I'm actually, he doesn't know this yet, but I was thinking of asking him. He'll know this when this airs. I was thinking of getting him on set when we film to kind of really like take in the movie in a different way, to kind of help build a score. And also because he was such a crucial and important part, it might be neat for him to be there as part of that element of the film too.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, I think that would be really interesting to see there, how that would change the way that he made music on that, because for lack of better explanation there, it almost felt like the music came from the film itself. Like through the characters' actions, it felt like the soundtrack was sort of created organically there, like it's sort of morphed into its own being there.
Yeah,
that wasn't
that's a testament to his talent.
Yeah, I haven't seen that in a lot of films, but it really felt like I've never seen, at least in independent cinema, the sort of matchup between the soundtrack and the film itself works so well. It almost feels like the two sort of live off of each other on there, and really appreciated that a lot about it as well. And yeah, I don't want to take up too much of your time here, but I do have one last thing I want to talk about here, and
Sure.
that was, I know the budget of the film was around $2,500, if I was correct there.
Yeah.
How big of a restriction was that? Because the film doesn't look like it was that low budget. I've seen films with much higher budgets that have looked significantly worse in many ways.
Yeah. Now, I will say this: I will never do that again. And the amount of money that I spent after I filmed the movie probably was more than $2,500. Just so it doubled, or it just a lot of other fees that needed to be done, like submitting to festivals. And I just kind of was like, I just want to throw stuff and see what sticks, obviously in directions that it would be appropriate for festivals. I'm not just going to go and just, weird festivals that would never even accept but genre related ones that I thought. So I mean, that adds up. And then there's other, just things where you have to buy drives or this and that, get promo material, etc. So yeah, but the making of all the actors, all the talent worked for free. They did this all volunteer as a passion project for myself, and they were all willing to support me in that. So that's a huge part of budget right there. I had already bought my camera that I used. So I used one camera and one tripod for the entire movie. And so I made it to make it not look like that. I would just shoot the same scene from different angles at times, or do close-ups and pullbacks this for different takes to make it look like there were multiple cameras being used. So I wanted it to definitely not look like that. And I also knew that like there's a lot of stuff that can be lost when you do a lot of handheld camera movement. So I tried to do as much as a tripod as possible and just pan. And it also related to this very almost voyeuristic aspect, like you were a fly on the wall. So I thought that lended to the tone of the film too. So it supported that. I just knew, I was like, this is what I got. This is how much money I have. And how much is it going to cost for these effects and stuff? So that's where I was able to find somebody willing to do these effects for just the cost of the material. So that's where the majority of the budget went. And the stuff isn't exactly expensive, but it adds up,
Yeah,
so
absolutely. That's
yeah.
great. I love seeing people that just come and join a film just because they love it. They want to do it. I think that leads to more natural performances there as well. If you're really invested in something enough that that's not even an issue there, that it leads to something better. The film felt very natural in that way too.
Yeah.
I am surprised to hear that you didn't have multiple cameras. I
Good.
did I did enjoy the sort of study shots there, sort of like in the bar and those. It did feel
Mhm.
like you were more present there. When you switch the camera angles so much, it almost takes you out of the experience. Definitely reminds you that you're just a viewer there and you're not part of it. Really appreciated that as well. And yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate you joining me here today. Did you want to shout anything out? Arsenic Media. Definitely going to include that in the description as well so people can check that out.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I do know that you've given some shout outs already, so that's great. Those are the important ones, and definitely the score and the soundtrack. There's still some available on disc if people are interested. So, and support independent cinema. Sometimes things like this only get a physical release. They're not streaming, and you got to just dive in and see and support. So let's go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thanks, Scott. I'm going to put some links down in the description of the video when this comes out as well for Unearthed Films. I'm going to be doing a giveaway on my channel as well for a few copies there, just trying to spread this as much as possible. So yeah, thank you for joining me here today. I really do appreciate it. The film was fantastic. It's had a great impact on myself, at least, as well, on my own filmmaking. Yeah, I just really appreciate you joining me here today. So thank you for that.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. You have a great day.
It was fun. You too.
Thanks. Bye.
Sure. Bye-bye.